Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm creating a shaped see-through shaker card. Now say that 3 times fast using the laboratory glassware and propagation plant set from Spellbinders. So I'm going to be creating the shape out of one of the glass jars, and then there's going to be a little plant growing out of the top. So to create the shaker shaped first, I'm gonna start with a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card base and 2 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card panels. And that green panel is gonna serve as a mat behind the white panel. So the first thing I'm gonna do is cut out the white panel shape. I've got this sort of jaggedy edge with a stitched outline on the side, just kind of something nice. And I'm gonna line it up on the green card panel, and I'm gonna use some temporary adhesive to attach the white panel to the green panel, lining it up exactly where I ultimately want it to go when I'm gonna glue everything down. I'm then going to line up the jar shape that I'm going to use, and I'm just using the die cut of the plant just to get a sense of spacing. And once I'm happy with its location, I'm going to tape it down, the jar die cut, and I'm gonna run it through my die cutting machine. I used the shim so that I could be sure that I was able to cut through both layers of cardstock in one pass. And I lucked out and put the temporary adhesive right behind where that jar cut shape was, so I was just able to remove the die cut and separate the pieces pretty easily. I'm now going to line up my green panel with the die cut jar onto the top of my card base, exactly where I want it to go. And I'm going to open it up and then run that through my die cutting machine. I use some temporary adhesive here as well, so I'm just removing that from the card base. So now I have 3 of the jars cut out of each of these layers. The next thing I'm going to do is just glue down the white panel to the green panel, lining up that jar shape perfectly, and that will form the front panel. To add a little bit of interest in the background, since I thought it would just look a little plain with just the green plant, I'm adding these silhouette stamped leaves in a light gray ink, just to sort of get something happening in the background to give it a little bit more interest and a little bit more design. That will be behind the main sort of die cut plants that I'll create. So you can see the different pieces. I'm cutting the plant out of 2 colors of green cardstock, and I'm also going to cut out the roots out of some brown cardstock, which I'm going to double up, so I'll do 2 die cuts. And then I'm going to cut, using the jar shape, I'm going to cut which is basically going to create a little border or frame of the jar using this sort of inner piece. So I'm lining that up on the inner piece with the outer sort of shape, and that will create sort of a thin border outline of the jar. And I'm going to do 2 of these. One will go on the front of the card and one will go on the inside of the card base, just to sort of clean up those edges, make it really nice and neat. So I did all of that off screen and glued my pieces together. And now I'm moving on to create the shaker window. So I'm adding some double-sided adhesive right around on the back of the green panel. And I have this little piece of clear acetate that I'm just going to press down on that double-sided adhesive. And I want to give this an effect of looking like a jar with water in it. So I'm adding some coloring with a blue Copic marker. It's a little hard to see on the glass mat that I have behind it, but there is a blue coloring on that acetate. I'm next going to glue down the roots. I'm gluing them down because when I add the shaker pieces, I don't want them to get stuck. They do anyway. That's just kind of what happened, but that was the goal of why I decided to glue them down. I'm now going to add the sentiment. So the sentiment I'm using says, you grow girl. And I want it actually to be on the inside of the card, but still visible kind of from the front of the card. So I'm placing that right below the roots and through the window, and that's ultimately where the sentiment will go. Then I'm going to do the same thing to the top of the card base. So I'm adding some double-sided adhesive and adding the clear acetate, and here you can see much more clearly the coloring with the Copic marker. It's just giving it a little bit of a blue coloring to make it really look like water. And now the fun part is to create the shaker shape. And so I'm adding way too much foam adhesive, but a lot of foam adhesive, and I'm adding various colors of blue shaker pieces that I have from Trinity Stamps. Just a variety of colors, really wanting to give that sort of depth to the water that will be the shaker window. And I'll remove all of the top pieces of the double-sided adhesive and line up to the best of my ability this green card panel on top of the card base. Lining up that window and pressing everything down to make sure it's all secure. And now is when I'm adding that sort of frame shape that I had mentioned cutting out of that gray cardstock to form the sort of outline of the jar. So I'm adding some liquid adhesive and then tapping off some excess so it doesn't like sploosh into the window very much. And then I'm just kind of placing it into the window space. It'll fit perfectly because it used that die cut shape to create the outline. I'm next adding my little propagation plant, and I really want to make this look like it's coming and growing out of the jar, and so I am just kind of lining it up with the edge and trimming it so that I can place this sort of top piece that is part of the glassware die set that sort of looks kind of like the, you know, the outer rim of a jar or something. And so it kind of looks like by placing that on top of the plant that it is growing outside of that jar. And then so here is the second outline of the jar that's going to be placed on the inside of the card panel just to clean up that edge a little bit. Again, going to wipe off the excess so it doesn't sploosh into the window. And then I'm just going to place that, lining it up perfectly into the die cut shape. And so now we have our finished card with a little shaker window and our little propagation plant growing out of the top. So you can see that the window is clear. You got your little shaker bits. And you can see the sentiment through the window, although it's kind of hidden a little bit with the water shaker bits. You grow girl, and you can sort of see on the inside that you can see through the front as well. And so that is the finished card of our shaped shaker see-through card. I hope you enjoyed watching this, and thanks for stopping by.